Hey guys, it's Sam Limon, and in today's tutorial we're going to be working on our very first InDesign project, which is going to be our InDesign Practice Exercise. This project follows right after our interface tutorial, and we're just going to cover a few of the basics in InDesign, and let's go ahead and jump right into it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is download this InDesign Practice Exercise.zip file, and once you download it, go ahead and unzip it. So I have it in my folder here. I'm going to go into my fundamentals. You could place it wherever you want, but once you have it downloaded, it's going to be this InDesign Practice Exercises.zip file. Go ahead and double click, and that unzips it. And what you're going to have is this Word doc with some information about California. And you're gonna have this images folder, which I have a few random images regarding California. And just for some practice, I do have a Photoshop file in there, an EPS, which is a format for vectors. So we're gonna be putting a vector in there, and just some images we're gonna play around with. So this is mostly for layout design, and we're gonna be creating a mini magazine, if you will, just something for some practice. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and open up InDesign, which is our magenta / darkish pink icon. And once you have it open, we're going to go to New File up here, or we could go to File, New, Document. So either way works. And then we should have a list of any recent items that we've worked on, or in your case, anything that anybody else might have created. You might see something like that. We're going to have maybe a few things under saved, print. We have different options here. And if we don't see the sizes, these are all set to points, but we could always change that. So if we go from units to inches, we see letter is selected. That's a 8.5 by 11. Again, we have different options up here. If we don't see what we need exactly, we could click on View All Presets, and we have a lot of different presets for certain file sizes. So this time, let's go ahead and click on A4. So click on A4. Again, let's change the units on the right to inches. So that's going to be a 8.2677 inches by a height of 11.6929 inches. That gives us portrait orientation. And let's go ahead and add 4 pages. So under pages on the right, our presets, go ahead and say 4. Go ahead and turn on facing pages. Make sure that's clicked. We want to start on page number 1. Our margins. Let's go ahead and give ourselves margins of 1 inch all the way around. If they're not all changing together, that's probably because this link icon is turned off. So that means I could change the margins manually, individually for the top, bottom, inside, and outside. But let's go ahead and link it. Do 1. It's a little bit too much, so we'll go ahead and go back and change that. But I want to show you where we could change these settings on the inside once we're working. And the same thing, let's go ahead and leave no bleed, but we are going to add a bleed for any images that are going to be printed up until our edge. And let's go ahead and say create with those settings. So now if you see, our margin is 1 inch from the edge, so we do not want that. So what we want to do is we want to go to layout. We could go to margins and columns, and we could change our margins here. So again, we want to make sure this link icon is selected, and we want to click on any of these arrows down to 0.5 inches, so ½ an inch from the border. That's going to be our margin. It's simply a guide. You could change it as you want, and go ahead and say OK. The reason why we're seeing it change in real time is because preview is on, so you could always turn preview off and on just to see the changes as we're applying them, and say OK. Another way where we could change that is if we go to our properties panel. We could change that there as well. If you don't have your properties panel, you simply go to Window, Properties, and that will turn on. And we could click on Adjust Layouts. And here we have the margins as well. We could change our orientation. And let's go ahead and add a bleed. So let's go ahead and do 0.125. Make sure that this link icon is on before you do that. Type it in one of these sections, and then if you just click on another one, they're all going to be 0.125, and then go ahead and say OK. So now that gave us our bleed here. If our ruler's not on, you could go ahead and say Command R and turn our ruler on, or we could toggle it off as well. Okay, another very important part of InDesign is, let me hide my properties here, having our Pages panel open. So let me go ahead and close these. If you don't have your Pages panel open, so I could right click and close it, you could simply go to Window, Pages, and if it appears anywhere, you know, in here, we could always drag it out. I like to have it separate, maybe over here. Open it, and that actually takes up a lot of space, so we could drag it out, open it, drag it in here, and there we go. And I could always make it a little bit thinner because our pages don't take up that much space. These are our pages that we set up. We set up 4 pages. So if I double click on page 1, I'm viewing page 1. Double click on page 2, it goes to 2, 3, it goes to 3. So 2 and 3 are together just like they are here. And the reason why they are showing this way is because we had selected facing pages. So basically, if I hold the spacebar and navigate up, this would be our cover. If I navigate down, this would be our inside spread. So once you open up the cover, on the back side of this cover page, it's going to be this page, and that is our spread. And then we have our 4th page here. So that is basically the back of this one. If we do not want to view facing pages, we could simply go to our properties panel and turn off facing pages. And now if we go and look at our pages, now we see the new layout, and we could scroll. Again, I'm holding space and clicking and dragging, and I could see the individual pages. So it just depends on how you want to work. For our purposes on this project, we're going to go ahead and leave facing pages on. So again, I'm going to my properties panel and turn on facing pages. Okay, now let's go ahead and say File, and let's save this. So File, Save. If this shows up, make sure we save on our computer, not onto our Creative Cloud. And I'm going to save it into my, let's see, Fundamentals folder. Just make sure you place it inside of that practice exercise folder that you downloaded, and go ahead and name it IND Practice hyphen, and go ahead and put your name or your last name. So I'm going to say Limon, and go ahead and save it here. So it's very important that you save it in this folder, because we're going to be linking to this images folder once we start bringing images in, and I'll show you what could happen down the line with when you're moving things around. So keep that in mind with InDesign. All these files are linking, and go ahead and say Save. Okay, so now let's actually take a look at our workspace. I have this set to the previous project what I had, in which I was the SAM portfolio, which was just a practice with the interface project. But we could go to Window, Workspace, and look through different ones. So we have Book, we have Digital Publishing. So you have different tools depending on what you want to do, how you want to work. You could also choose those options through here. At the very top of our application frame. Essentials Classic, I think that's a good one, but I always like to add more tools depending on what it is again. So Interactive for PDF, that gives us some more options for when we make PDFs that are interactive, where you could click on links, etc. So the few things that I like to do, typography is another good one. I just want to make sure that I always have my pages. Layers is a good one. Links as well. So if we don't have it, we could go to Window, Links. and we can start customizing this. I always want character and paragraph, so they're down here. I probably don't need story. All of these are going to be optional. Text wrap, make sure you have text wrap if we're going to be using it. But again, I always like to set pages up right here. Actually, let's open it up and drag it here, because that's going to be one of the ones that we are mostly working on. Okay, so now our pages panel. If we ever want to add more pages, we could simply go to the very bottom of our pages panel and we could create a new page. Since we do have facing pages on our what was our last page, page 4, it gave us a 5th page. We could add another one, a 6th page, and so on. If you ever want to delete a page, you just select the page, click on the little trash can icon, and you could delete a page. If you have a spread selected, so in the pages panel you could hold shift and select 2 pages, and you could delete the spread, so you could delete multiple pages at once. Now right now it's just deleting them, no problem, but it would give us a warning if we had content in them. So if we are already built, you know, some layouts with images, with text, we would have that warning. So now that I'm looking at it, this very first page we changed our margins, and the second and third page it didn't. So let's go ahead and hold shift, delete pages 2 and 3, and go ahead and delete them. And the reason why it did that is because we went to layout and we changed margins and columns, but that's only going to change it on a certain page. So we actually want to make it so that it affects everything. So that was my error there. If we go to file and then go to document setup, so this takes us to what we very first did, our document setup, and let's change our margins here to 1/2 inch. So this way it overrides everything, and we want to make sure we have our bleed. That did pick it up, and go ahead and say OK. So now let's go ahead and add new pages. So that's page 2, page 3, and page 4, and now they all have the correct margins of 0.5 inches. Okay, another thing to note on our pages panel, if you see this A parent and we have a spread there, these are our parent pages. So parent pages are used to control multiple pages. They used to be called master pages, but they changed it a couple years ago. So if you happen to watch any of my older videos, I might mention master pages. Just know that they're going to be what are now called parent pages. And for example, if you want the same element repeating on multiple pages, you would set that in the parent page as opposed to creating that same object in multiple pages. So let me show you that. For example, if I double click on this first parent page, the one on the top left, it gives me the spread here. This is not first, second, third, or fourth. This is specifically the parent page. Now if I click on my rectangle tool and I swap these colors to give me a black fill, no stroke, and I click and drag and I just make a rectangle in my parent page, guess what? It applies it to all my left pages. So page 2, page 3. I'm going to click on my selection tool on the top over here on my tools panel. And if I navigate, now I have that same shape on my left hand pages. Now if I go back to the right spread on the master pages and I create, let's say with the ellipse tool, I'm going to choose a different color just so we see the difference, and I create an ellipse. Notice how it applies that to the individual pages, page 1 and page 3. And if I click on the letter V on my keyboard, that's going to take me to my selection tool. And if I try to click on any of these, it doesn't let me. So they're basically locked in place, being controlled by that parent page. Let me go back to that spread for my parent pages. Go ahead and click and drag to select both, delete, and go ahead and save. So Command or Control S. Okay, another very important part of layout design, and you could start applying this to maybe your portfolio, or this is definitely true for websites, editorial. Also, something like we're going to be doing on our exercise here is layouts use grids to keep things in order. And let me go to this website here that I have for you guys. So it's a way to control your layout. And let me zoom in here a bit so we could see what we're talking about. So for example, if this was a spread on a magazine, we could hover over it and see how this has a 4-column grid that organizes basically all these elements, and everything looks lined up and nice. So for example, this date on the top, it's right aligned, it's right on this column here. So basically this paragraph, all these paragraphs take up two of those columns, and we have an empty column here and another column here where we have all this information. Now this at the bottom goes into the left a little, so you could always cheat it a little, but look at how nice that looks. And then this image here is taking up the whole 4-column grid. So let's check this one out. This grid here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns as well. So if we look at the right hand side of this spread, each one of those paragraphs, the left one for that, let me zoom in a little bit more. It's actually not taking. Okay, so this is like a special paragraph. We could see it's different because it's in blue compared to the others. So those are taking up 2 columns each. And the image, it doesn't have to go the whole way. I think it would have looked nice, but you know, if you have some other information here, you could probably put it. And then if we look at this grid here, this top image is taking up 2 of those columns in width. Let me hover away so we could see that. And then this little inset here with type is taking up 3 columns. This image down here is taking up 3 columns as well, but it's also going into the bleed area. Look at how nicely that's all positioned. And again, we have those special paragraphs down here, which take a column each. If we look at this spread, it's a 3-column spread, so this one just has the main information within. You know, the image takes up everything. And on the right spread, we have 3 columns, and the text is laid out in the right 2 columns. And we have natural selection and that subheadline that span across those 2 columns as well. So you could start seeing how these systems work. This 4-column grid, we have the title and some information here on 3, and the first few paragraphs on the column on the right. So we're going to do a simple grid structure, and it's up to you, you know, how many columns you want to do. As you see here, we have 3, 4, 5, etc. Web pages are built on 12, but you know, you could always set them up differently if you want a different grid, etc. So I'm going to go back to InDesign. And we're going to set up a grid system, but we want it to be applied to all the pages. So this is where we could apply it in our parent page. So I'm going to go double click on either the left or right part of our parent pages. And we are going to go to Layout and go to Create Guides. Now let's go ahead and make it simple. So we're going to let's go ahead and do 3 columns. If you wanted to add rows, we could add rows as well. And since we have preview on, we could see what it's doing. Now, right now, in my options, I have fit guides to margins. So this is starting, if you notice, let me see if I could zoom in here. I can't really see. Let me zoom in here. Go back to Layout, Create Guides. Let's go back to our 3 columns. Okay, so fit guides is set to margins. So it starts at the margin here and it ends at the margin here. So it's not taking into account what's outside of the margins that we had set at that 1/2 inch, 0.5 inches. If we set it to page, it is taking that into account. So now it's measuring from the edge of the page up to this area, and it's splitting it up into 3 columns. and the space inside is called the gutter. So we want to set it to margins, just so we could follow along with our margins. And let's go ahead and increase our gutter. So let's go ahead and take it up to 0.25 inches. That would give us a little bit of space for our paragraphs or images, etc. And if we wanted to add some rows, we could also add those if we wanted to. So I'm going to go ahead and add maybe 6. We might use them, we might not. And let's also increase our gutter to 0.25 inches. So I know the documents we were looking at here, we were only set up with columns, but we can add rows is what I'm trying to say. And go ahead and say OK. And now I'm going to zoom out a bit so we have that information there. And if we go to our page 1, 2, 3, etc., we have all of those guides. So these guides, just to let you know, they're non-printing. They are specifically to structure our layout. Okay, now let's go ahead and start working with text, and let's work on our very first page or our cover page. So I'm going to click on my very first page in my Pages panel, double click, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and let's go ahead and click on our type tool. So click on our type tool. I'm going to click by the left hand side margin here, click and drag down and to the right until it goes up until our right hand side margin, and go down to about where it says width of 7.267 inches and a height of 2 inches. It doesn't have to be exact, just roughly. Okay, and then let's go ahead and give this a title. So let's say welcome to California. And we could go ahead and zoom in, doing Command plus. So that zooms into our type here. I'm going to highlight it all or triple click, or you could do Command A to select everything within that text frame. So we created a text frame that is about 7 inches wide by 2 inches tall. Let's go ahead and change our font up here on our control bar, or if we go into our character panel, we could do it here as well, so your choice. And let's type in ATC, and let's go with ATC Garnet Ultra, or let's do ATC Onyx Bold actually. Now let's go ahead and make California on the second line. So if we put our cursor right before the C in California, go ahead and hit enter or return, that brings it down onto the second line. And actually, just for the sake of making this correct, let's go ahead and do backspace before California. Hold shift and hit return, so that gives us a soft return. Now visually nothing's going to change, but just so you know, we do a soft return whenever it's part of the same sentence. Whenever it's a new paragraph completely, then we're doing what's called a hard return, or just pressing return without the shift. Now let's do Command A and let's scale it up. So either up on our control panel or in our character panel. Now, right now it is left aligned, so we could either change it up here on the right hand side of our control panel, align center, and my computer is being a little slow, so let me click away, move over here, or you could change that in your paragraph panel. So you have a few more options here. I'm going to leave welcome to that size, and I'm going to highlight California only this time, so you could double click on California, and I'm going to go way bigger with that. So maybe about 70 points for California, and welcome to 24. Now let's say I want to tuck California a little tighter onto welcome to. I could highlight California, and I'm going to adjust the leading, which is right underneath the font size here, and I'm going to drop that a bit. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to take it closer to welcome to. And I'm going to do 68 points. So the leading is the space between lines. And you could highlight any part of a line and it's going to bring it up or bring it down. Now I'm going to click on my move tool and I could adjust the size of my text frame. So if my text frame was about 2 inches tall, I could click on the center bottom here, drag it down or up, and I could drag it from the left hand side or from the right hand side. Just know that the text is centered to the text frame. So that's why if our text frame is centered on the margins, we know we have a perfectly centered Welcome to California title here. I'm going to move it down. If I hold shift while I'm moving it down, it's going to keep it centered as long as I don't stray too far away from where my mouse is going. So let's go ahead and zoom out a bit. Command S to save it. And let me actually change the font on welcome to. So feel free to explore a little here. I'm going to triple click to highlight this line. And I'm going to go to my fonts. And let's see if we have a cursive ATC. I'm going to go with ATC Citrine. And I'm going to zoom in, make that font size a little bit bigger. So maybe a 30 on that. There we go. That gives it a little bit of a difference. Go ahead and save it. Zoom out. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and place an image. So before placing an image, I want to make sure I click away and deselect our title here because I don't want to accidentally replace this with an image, which is totally possible. So make sure we're on our move tool, click away, and then we're going to go to File, Place. We want to go into our Images folder, and we want to look for this Viviana Unsplash image. So I'm going to click on the space bar so I could preview any of the images. So Viviana, Richer, a certain number, Unsplash. So this is an Unsplash image, and they're usually titled with the name of the photographer. I want to make sure Show Import Options is off and Replace Selected Item is off. If this was on and I had something selected, it would replace it. So it could be beneficial if you ever want to flip out or swap out an image. You just select it, replace selected item, and it's going to replace it with the new image. So that's an instance where you might want to use that. Right now we have nothing selected, so nothing's going to happen whether replace is on or off. So you can leave it either way, but just be aware of that. Go ahead and say open. And now what we get is a loaded cursor. So let me show you what happens if I click once. You don't have to do this if you want to try it out for yourself. If you click, it's going to bring in that image at 100%, which is huge. So we don't want to do that. Let me do Command Z. So what I actually want to do is go ahead and zoom in just a little bit. I want to click on the left hand side over here, right by the top and left lines of this bleed, so the red line. Make sure you do not do it from the edge of the page here to the edge of the page. We want to go all the way up to our bleed. Now we're not going to be printing these, but if this was a real project and your image is meant to go all the way up to the edge of the page, make sure you go to the bleed, not the edge of the page, because if the trimming is off just a little bit, it's going to show white. So let's make sure we go from the top left on the bleed, go down to the bleed on the right. So I'm clicking and dragging down and to the right, and wait for that blue line to snap into that red bleed line and go ahead and let go. So now I actually have my layers panel open here. Let's go ahead and bring that Welcome to California text up above the Vivian image, and we could click and drag just to make sure that Welcome to California is on top. And let's bring it down a little bit here, actually somewhere on the image. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click on the type tool, put my cursor in between any of those letters on Welcome to California, do Command A to select everything, and I'm going to change its color. So I could go up here in our control panel, click on this T up here. Right now it is black, and we're going to choose paper. So this isn't white, it's actually the lack of ink, because this is technically meant to be printed. If it is being printed, so that's why it says paper. So paper is white here. And click on our selection tool. So now I want to continue this black along the bottom of the image, so I could just go ahead and click on our ellipse tool. Where I have my ellipse tool, we're going to our rectangle tool, and we want to choose the color black. Make sure you do not do registration, make sure you select black. And we're going to click from the bottom left hand side, and I believe it didn't take the color. It's okay, we could change it afterwards. So the bottom left of the bleed, and go up to where it snaps on the bleed on the right hand side, and scroll up just until it's inside of that bottom of the image a little bit. And let's change its fill color to black now. Click on the move tool. And actually what happened was, with this, I accidentally had it selected and I chose black. So we want to make sure to not have anything selected, because it's going to change it. So since I have this in black, technically it'll work if I put it down here. Just got to move it up in the layers order. But we want to make sure that it is only text. So we want to go and change the color to none, because this is treating it like a shape, the text frame. Kind of like if it was a box in Illustrator. I could give it, for example, a fill of yellow and a stroke of magenta. So it's going to take those settings for the text frame itself. So we want to make sure there's none and none. And now I could click on California and drag it down. So you always want to make sure when you hover over California, or when you hover over an object, you get this little icon here, so the arrow with that square with points, and then you could move it down here. And now let's go ahead and make another text frame, and I'm going to drag it the same thing so it's centered from the left all the way to the right, so from the left margin to the right margin, and go ahead and type in by, and then put your name. Highlight it, so triple click or Command A. It's typing in black by default, but I want to change it. I'm going to click on the eyedropper tool, which is down here. If you don't have it, click and hold. There might be the color theme tool or the measure tool, eyedropper tool, and let's select the color from the sky in this image. So I'm going to go with like a yellowish, orangish. Click on my move tool. So there we go. We selected our color. Highlight all of this. I'm going to center it. So center text. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and change the font. So I'm going to change the font to, let's stick with our ATC fonts. Just because if you try to match something of mine, we know we all have these. If not, go ahead and choose something of your liking. That's okay. So I'm going to go with ATC Pyrite bold italic. So do this to your liking. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. And I'm going to set it at the very bottom of my margins. Again, you could resize this however you want. I want my name to be at the very bottom. If you do Command 0 to fit the page in the window and press W. So make sure you click away, not selected on anything. Click on W, and there we have our cover. So simple, but we're starting to get the flow of how things work in InDesign. So this is a good time to save. Command S. Let's close our layers panel, and let's go to our page 2. So double click on page 2 in our pages panel. Okay, so that was one way of putting text into InDesign, is creating a text frame with our text frame tool and just typing. Another way is by importing a text document that already exists. So let me go ahead and turn on all my guides. So press W on our keyboard. That way we could base it off of our guides that we created, off of our grid. And let's go ahead and click on our type tool. And I'm going to make a grid. I'm going to make a text frame that goes from this second column to the third column, and let's take it all the way down. Now our cursor should be highlighted. Let me zoom in a little bit, and let's go, if we see our cursor blinking, let's go to File, Place, and let's go ahead and select this California document. And we want to say show import options. Make sure that's on. Replace selected item, that's okay. There's no text in there. It would basically be replacing any text that's in there, so we have nothing. Show import options on, and go ahead and open up the document. Now we want to make sure we remove styles and formatting from text and tables. So this is in formatting. If you wanted to keep any of the formatting in there, we would make sure preserve styles and formatting from text and tables is on, and we have a lot more options, but we're going to do some formatting here on our own. So we want to remove the styles, we just want the clean text. We'll do the formatting and go ahead and say OK. So this is the information that we have. We have a title, we have what's going to be a subheading, we have a paragraph, and a list of places in California. So let me just click on my selection tool. If I click on it, we could navigate and we could see that we also have that list, 1, 2, 3, etc. There's no formatting to it. And if we look at the bottom of our InDesign application, we have one error. And that error is going to be text that is that falls outside of the bounds of our text frame. So notice at the very bottom here, let me zoom in. We stop at 7, and I know I have more options there or more text there because I finished this at 10. And this also gives us that little warning, the red square with the plus sign. That means there's more text than there is space here. So if I click and drag it down, we could see more of that text that's hidden, so it's not going to show because of our formatting. I'm going to take it back up to our margin here. Let's go ahead and place an image. So let me zoom out here. I'm going to click away and let me go to File, Place. And we're going to go back to Images, and let's go ahead and look for this. The first image is Alexi Unsplash image. We don't need the show import options because we're just bringing the image, but let's say open. You could see the import options once it comes in. We basically have none. If it was a Photoshop file, we'd have more options, etc. But we just want to bring in the image. Since that was checked on, this comes on. Let's go ahead and say OK. And now go ahead and drag from the top left-hand corner of the bleed, so on the red line, and drag down to the bottom red line. So now, if we notice, that image covers up the text that we just placed. Okay, so we're going to make this a thin strip, and we're going to use our columns. So this image is going to take over our first column. So if we navigate to the right hand side here, click on the right part of the image and drag to the left. So I did this on purpose so that you see that when we drag an edge of an image frame, we're actually editing the frame, not the content inside, not the actual image. So we're not stretching it, skewing it. And I'm going to get into images a little bit more after the fact. And then if, for example, if on the top one you didn't get this exactly, just go ahead and call me over and we could go ahead and fix it. And the same thing with this one. So if I click on this image, make sure if you click the way and you select it, make sure you do not grab it from this circle, the content grabber tool. Make sure you just click on it from here, and we want to take the right hand side of the image frame up to the edge of that gutter. So we have the space between the two columns, which is where our text is, and our first column is gonna be for our image. Now go ahead and I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. Now go ahead and select in the center when this turns into a hand, or click on your direct selection tool and then click, and now we have the actual image selected, not the frame. And we want to either drag to the left, but make sure our image stays lined up with our bleed, or just click on the left or right arrows on our keyboard and you could hold it. And let's place it to where this part of the Golden Gate Bridge shows something like that. Doesn't have to be exact. And again, I'll go over images a little bit in more detail after the fact here. Okay, so let's get back to our text here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and click on our type tool and put our cursor in here, anywhere within the text. And then we could do Command A to select everything. Now we want to change the font, the leading, font size, etc. So again, different options. We have our control panel. We have our paragraph panel with some options there, and our character panel with some options here. So if you notice, we could change the font here. And we also have our properties panel. Where did they go? So if we don't have it, again, window and properties. And on that note, if we don't have our paragraph or character panel, we go to window, and these happen to be under type and tables. So we have character, and we have paragraph and table if we want to create tables. So we have different options nested in between those, but just know type and tables is where we're going to be finding our character and paragraph panels. So if, again, on properties panel, we have those options here. So let's go ahead and change this to ATC any way you want. So ATC, and let's look for a serif font. So let's go to ATC Agate Medium. So that's a good font. Command A again if you happen to click away. And let's bring this up to a 14-point size. Let's go ahead and highlight California Love. So if we triple click on California Love, we could increase the size here. And let's change the font on that, because that's going to be the title of this section. So let's type in ATC, look for a bold font. So I'm going to go with ATC Garnet Ultra. Now let's highlight this second paragraph. Let me zoom in just a little bit more. So it's actually not a paragraph. We're gonna make it like a sub headline. So we're gonna highlight up to the welcome part. Make sure you include the period here. So right before California is a state like no other. Let's go ahead and change that to ATC Agate Black Italic, maybe we could do that. And I'm gonna increase the size to maybe 16 points. And I'm going to, let's highlight California Love, and let's change the color of it. So I'm gonna click on the eyedropper tool and select one of these like oranges from this bridge, or like the deep reds. So I'm gonna select that, click on the selection tool. And now I want to center only this part, so this title and the subheadline. So select both of those. I could center them separately from our paragraph down here. And now let's say we wanted to put the rest of this text into 2 columns instead of 1. So what we're going to do there is go into our text frame options. So we have a couple ways to get there. We could right click and go to text frame options. Or we could just do the shortcut Command B as in boy. So right now under columns it's fixed number, but under number 1 we have 1 column basically. We could give it 2 columns. So I'm going to say 2 columns, say OK. Now notice how it formatted it to 2 columns, but we have a couple issues here. California Love is no longer going across the 2 columns, so it centered it within this first column as well as our subheadline, and our gutters are not matching here. So let's go back into our text frame options, Command B. So the gutter issue is because we did not change this gutter from the default numbers. So if we increase this to the 0.25, which we had set up for our gutters, now these 2 columns are perfectly matching. So go ahead and say OK. So that's one issue solved. Now let's say we want to span California Love to how it was before within these columns as well as the subheadline. I could click and drag to highlight both the title and the subheadline. And now in our paragraphs panel, we could click on the options, the hamburger icon on the right hand side of our paragraph panel, and we could say span columns. And under paragraph layout, we want to say span columns and span all. So it's going to span across the 2 columns and say OK. So there we go. So now that section is spanning the columns. If we don't want that, if we wanted to keep it, highlight it, click here, span columns again. And we could go to single column, OK. And that changes it back to the single column, just depending on what you want. So I'm going to undo. So we want that. Now that is looking pretty good. Press W so we could see the layout, what it's looking like, and click away. Now let's say we want to give it a little bit more space between the California Love and the subheadline. We could click on our type tool, triple click to get this first line underneath the title, and let's go ahead and increase the leading. So the leading is right under here, right under the text size or the font size, or it is also in our character panel. And we have a leading of 19.2 points. So these are automatically set unless we manually change them. So 16 is always going to be, about a 20% increase roughly on the leading, but we could go higher. So if we increase it, we could give it more space. And the shortcut for that is once we have something highlighted, we could hold Option and press up or down on our keyboard, and notice our leading changing here. So it's changing by 2 points. That's for one part, but now let's say we want to change the leading between these 2 parts of the paragraph. If I highlight this first part and increase the leading, it's only changing this first part. So we want to undo. Let's go back to auto. So we want to get both of these, and what we're going to have to do here is highlight this last sentence, and then if we go up to our paragraph here on our control panel, or into our paragraph panel in our properties, and we go to this last part which says space after, that's going to give us a space after this paragraph. So we could increase this space here, and let's say a 0.125. Now that brings both of these columns down. So that's another way to increase that size. And now actually we want to increase the size for these lists of locations. So Yosemite National Park, San Francisco, Big Sur, Los Angeles. So if we do Command A, and let's go ahead and increase after on everything. Let's go ahead and do the 0.125. And that gave us a little bit of space there too. So basically at the end of every paragraph, it's going to increase that space. Okay, so now let's go ahead and place the rest of that text that is overset in this text frame on the next page. So I'm going to press W on our keyboard. Make sure I was clicked away. If you actually accidentally place a W in our text, let's go ahead and undo it, click away, and then press W. That way we could see our guides. And go ahead and click on this red square with the plus sign. So if you click on this text frame, the first one that we did, click on it, that loads up the cursor with our text. Now let's go ahead and click somewhere around here on the left hand side by our left margin and drag all the way to the right margin and drag all the way down to the bottom margin. So what that does is it places all of our text into these, basically into this text frame, but it's set up to have 3 columns because of our grid system. So we want to, we could either follow that or we could change it. So on this one, let's do Command B, and let's change this to 2 columns. And just for the sake of even spacing between columns, let's go ahead and change our gutter to 0.25 inches. Say OK. So we're kind of breaking away from this 3-column grid system, but if we would have made it a 4-column grid, this would be perfectly aligned with 2 grids on the left, 2 grids on the right, and each one of these columns would span 2 grids each. So it would not look off if we click W and we take a look at it this way. Press W again so we could see our guides. And we could always adjust our text frame by clicking and dragging, but we want to stay within our boundaries. If we go too far down, then it's going to force certain parts out. So let me go back up here. And actually, I noticed an issue here on 9. Put our cursor right before 9 because 8 is San Diego, 9 is Death Valley National Park, and press return. So let's break that away. I'm not sure when that happened, if that came in wrong or if I accidentally deleted a space. So now I have the error again. So again, there's always ways to fix that to bring in the text that's not showing. One is making all your font size smaller, or another one is just making your text frame bigger. Hopefully that brought that last part in. It did not. So let's go up to somewhere along there. And just for the sake of making things a little bit nicer, this top part of the line is part of 7 Sequoia National Park. So we want to stay away from that single line or single sentence. I'm going to make it go up a little bit more. Definitely do not want that grandeur part of number 7 on its own. So let's go up a little. Now it's looking a little bit better. Let's go ahead and save. Okay, so one thing that I noticed based off of a hierarchy here is now we have our main title, that's big, bold. Our secondary read is our subheadline. And then we have body copy. But within the body copy, when I say copy, it's just another word for text, but it's more of the professional term. And body because it's, you know, part of the main body. It's not a headline or a subheadline. So whenever you hear me say copy, I'm not meaning to copy something, but it's body copy. So it's, in our terms that we would understand, it's text. So just so you know, industry standard body copy. So one, Yosemite National Park could kind of be like another headline, or it could be a headline for the paragraph. So we could make that a bit bolder so it could stand out. So I'm going to highlight Yosemite National Park. So triple click, and let's go ahead and change the font here. So I could click on, basically I have options in our control panel for the character formatting and for paragraph formatting. So I'm going to change it from ATC Agate medium to, Let's try bold. Let's actually try black. So that's a bit bolder. And let's go ahead and make that font size a little bit bigger. So let's go 16. Maybe it's too much. And this is always where we're, trying different things. Let's go back to 14. I think that's good. So that would separate it. So now we know it's part of like a different paragraph. And we now have several different things, right? So we could use what are called paragraph styles to our advantage. So paragraph styles, we have it in our paragraph styles panel here. And we have no paragraph styles yet. And we also have them in our properties panel. So we could add them however we want. And this is beneficial. This is a little more advanced, but it's beneficial to cover now because it makes things easier to do in the long run. If you ever want to reuse paragraph styles, you don't have to reformat all the time. So let's go ahead and start creating some paragraph styles. So if we highlight California Love, and then let's go to our paragraph styles panel. If you do not have it, paragraph styles is under Window, Styles, and we have different styles. We have paragraph styles. And let's go ahead and create a new style with this little square with the plus sign. Click on that. So it gives us paragraph style 1. Let's go ahead and double click on it. And let's give it a name. Something that you would remember. I'm going to go with orange headline. And if you notice where it says style settings, right now it says no paragraph style, so it's based on no paragraph style. It tells us a font, exactly the size, the color. It's an unnamed color. We have no color for it yet. It's centered. It has space after of 0.125 inches, and it's spanning columns. So all of this is specific to that paragraph style. Go ahead and say OK. So now we have that paragraph style. Let's highlight now the second paragraph style we're going to create, or the second, the subheadline. And so create a new style. And let's go to paragraph style 1, double click it. Now notice how it jumped here. That's because if you recall earlier, we highlighted this first one and we said 25 points. So it's applying the 25 points to everything. So let's actually highlight it again. We could go into paragraph style and let's go and name it subheadline or subhead. Let's go to basic character formats. Under leading, let's change that to auto. Turn on preview. That takes us back to where we were. So there's a lot of things we could change here. It's adding the indent, the space after, etc. But we want to take the leading back to 19.2 or automatic and say OK. So that's our subhead. Our body copy, we could just highlight any section of it. Click to create a new paragraph style 1, double click it. And let's name that body copy. Say OK. And let's highlight Yosemite National Park. Click to create a new paragraph style 1, double click. And we'll name this body copy header. So it's a header specifically for the body copy. You can name it list header, etc. as long as you know what it is. Say OK. So now basically paragraph styles, depends if you're going to be using it over and over, but it's always a good idea to do paragraph styles. Now if we want to apply this to all these other headings, I could simply highlight to San Francisco and say body copy header. So click on it. And I notice a small issue here. It's changing everything. So that's because it's treating all of this as a paragraph. So if I zoom in, let's figure out why, because it should technically only be changing San Francisco and not the whole text. So let me actually highlight this part of the text and say body copy. So it's changing everything. So if we go into type and show hidden characters, this tells me Remember those hard returns or soft returns that I mentioned? After San Francisco, there is a soft return. So this little blue line tells us shift and return were clicked to start this, but it's basically splitting this as if to San Francisco was the first part of this sentence, when it should technically be a different paragraph. So it's treating this whole thing as a paragraph. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm going to put my cursor before known, press backspace, and then return to give it a hard return here. And let's go ahead and highlight San Francisco. And now let's click on body copy header. And it's throwing the formatting a little bit off, but it's okay. Now let's go back and fix this one. Famous for its dramatic, do backspace return. So now under body copy header, let's change the formatting here. Let's double click in the body copy header here. Let's go to indents and spacings. Let's do no space after. So say OK. And this bottom one should be body copy. Okay, a lot of little things going on, but we could fix it all. So basically we want the space after the body copy header to have no space. So indents and spacings, we took that off. But the space after the body copy should still have the 0.125. Okay, so fixing several things at once, but let's go to number 3. Put our cursor before a 1. Backspace, hit return. Highlight Big Sur and do body copy header. So that gives us the bolder font and removes that space. And we're going to do that to all of these. So double click before LA, backspace return. 5, right after Napa Valley, backspace return. So we're looking for that paragraph symbol. And remember, these are just the hidden characters, they're non-printing. So it's just a tool to help us out here. Backspace return. 8, backspace return, and we'll do the applying the paragraph style afterwards. Okay, so that's all done. Now let's double click or triple click Los Angeles. That's a body copy header. Napa Valley, body copy header. Lake Tahoe, the same thing. So you could see where if you have like a long list of things, this makes things very easy to change. Okay, so that is all good now. And there we go. Now it's starting to get some structure. Let's go ahead and save it. Now, just so you know, if you highlight, like let's say for example, this to San Francisco, which has a paragraph style of body copy header, and I actually click on orange headline, guess what? It's gonna pick up all the styles from this California Love, which was our original paragraph style, which is gonna be that font, centered, it's gonna span across both columns, etc. So that's why it's important that we click on the correct one. We could highlight San Francisco, we could make it a subhead, so it's gonna pick up the subhead style. We could say body copy. It's going to be the regular body copy style or body copy header. That's what we want. Okay, so I think we're looking pretty good there. Let's go ahead and save. And that is good. Okay, now let's go ahead and add an image here. So I'm going to go to File, Place. And there's a couple ways to bring in images as well. File, Place. I'm going to look for this Barthélemy image, which is the lifeguard tower at the beach, say open. Actually, you could turn off show import options, say open. And we could click and drag just randomly. So that's one way to place it. Let me delete it. If I go to my folder where this file exists, go to images, and I could drag it in here, drag it from the actual computer onto InDesign. It loads up the cursor too, and I could click and drag. So I want you to do this just a little bit randomly. So I'm going to go back to File Place, choose that image. No set rules, right? Just click and drag because I want to show you something. An image placed in InDesign is made up of two parts: the image frame and the image content. To better explain that is, I'm going to move this to the side. I'm going to press W just to hide the grid temporarily. I have this rectangle frame tool, so I could click on that and then click and drag. So now I have a frame. If I press W again, we could see that X on it. So this frame is waiting for something to be placed in there. I could make it a certain color. So let's say I'm just going to make it this blue, this cyan. If I select it and if I say File Place, and if I have Replace Selected Item selected, and I choose just any of these images, I'm going to choose, I'm going to delete this afterwards, but Johannes, Anderson, doesn't matter what, just say Open. It places the image inside. Now it looks a little bit blurry because the image is big, but if I go to View, Display Performance, and say High Quality Display, it would show me what the image actually looks like. So now the frame was that size that I made. I just clicked and dragged, but it's placing the image in there. So if I click and drag and make that image bigger, or the image frame bigger, the image stays, so the content stays, but the image is, but the frame is getting bigger, the image remains. Now, I'm going to delete this. This image, when we brought it in, it creates the frame as well as the image. So I'm going to press W. I could manipulate the frame to zoom in on a certain area. Basically, it crops out the rest of the image. If I click on the content grabber tool, which is, let me zoom in a little bit, press W, select the image. It's hard to tell here. It's not really showing. If you notice at a certain point, it selects, there we go. If I am on my selection tool and I highlight and go towards the center of the image, this content grabber tool shows up, which is like a little circle, a little donut. If you click and drag on that, you could move the image within the frame. If I zoom out, if I select, I could see this orange box. That's the size of the actual image. If you recall, it was a vertical image, but the frame is this size. So it's basically a window. If I drag this away, the image is still there, but it's not visible through my frame. So I could always go back to my content grabber, click and hold, and I could see the image appearing. I'm going to do something like that. Now, if you want to make this image bigger, if you hold Shift to make this bigger, you're actually making the frame bigger, not the actual content inside. Let me undo. If you want to make it bigger, make the image bigger, hold Shift and Command. So this is a little bit different in InDesign than in Illustrator and Photoshop. Shift and Command, that's going to resize your image as well as your frame together. So again, if you want to select just the image inside the content, you either have to be on your selection tool and choose the content grabber tool and move it around. Or you click on your direct selection tool and you click, and that directly gives you access to the content inside. But if you want to move just the image frame, click on your selection tool, click and drag as long as you're not clicking on the center where that cursor changes to a hand. So now let's go ahead and place it here. I'm going to hold Shift and Command to make it bigger. Take the width all the way from the left to the right margins and to the top. And I'm going to resize this so that it doesn't block my text. And let's try to get something like that. Now you also could, once you have, let's say, your image frame this size, and let's say your image is bigger or smaller, you could select it with your selection tool, content grabber, zoom out. Now you could hold Shift and resize the image and move it around within that frame. And accidentally move the frame. So you just want to make sure that you have your image actually goes past the image frame or right up to it. Now this is where you could mess things up. If you try to resize it here, it's going to stretch and skew it. So you do not want to do that. Let's undo. You always want to make sure that these numbers up here are even. That tells you that it's proportionate. So 21.75, 21.75. If we stretch it down this way, this is just the image inside. Notice the orange bounding box. It's 21.75 and 9.65. So it's super stretched or super thinned down. So those numbers have to always match in order to have something that's proportionate. And then I'm going to place it somewhere around there. I like that. Click away. Click W, and now we are looking good. So there we go. That's a layout. And now let's go back. Let's go to page 4. So either you could go down to page 4 holding the space bar, or double click on 4. Press W. Now we could see our grid again. Okay, so another way that we can import text here is copy paste. So first we did typing into a text frame. Then we placed text from a Word doc. So now we could copy paste. So let's go into our web browser. And let's go to lipsum.com. So Lipsum, Lipusm. And it gives you this lorem ipsum, which is dummy text based off of Latin. And we could scroll down, and it tells you, it gives you like a brief introduction to what it is, but it's just placeholder text. And let's go ahead and generate 8 paragraphs. So down here, say 8 paragraphs, and generate lorem ipsum. And now we could just highlight all of this. Right click, copy, go back to InDesign, and let's click on our type tool, and let's create a frame that covers basically everything. So the size of our margin, and then right click and then say paste. Command V, and that places it in a default, so Minion Pro. So if we do Command A, we could always go into our paragraph styles and go to body copy. So now it's going to pick up the ATC Agate medium 14 point that we had set from our previous pages. So let's go ahead and hit return. And we still have these hidden characters on. So as we see, this is like if we pressed enter or return and we have one paragraph here, and press enter again, so we have another paragraph. So let's go ahead and do Command A to select everything from this paragraph, from this text frame, and let's go ahead and change it a little bit. Let's go ahead and go into our paragraph formatting controls on our control panel here, and let's go ahead and get rid of the space after. So let's do 0. And this one just has an extra return there, and that's okay. Let's go ahead and go into our text frame options. So if we do Command B, and let's change the number of columns to 2, and with our gutter of 0.25. And notice how our text is at the very edge. So let's say we wanted some space inside. We could do inset spacing, and we could, as long as this is clicked on, we could do inset spacing from all sides. So let's bring it in. So let's do 0.125, say OK. Now if we click and see, we have an inset spacing from the edge of our text frame, and it pushes everything in just a little bit, so it gives us a little space. Now you might find that useful for certain things. So that's one thing you could do. Command B again. It's aligned to the top, so let's say we want to align it to the center. It's actually not going to change there. Not much at least. But let's go up to our, for example, right here where we did our name, so by Sam Limon. If I bring this up all the way, the text frame, make it taller, it's lining the text to the top. If I do Command B on that, so the text frame options for this text frame, if I do align to center, it's going to center it within that text frame. So we have the centering of the paragraph, and we have the centering vertically here. Or we could align it to the bottom if we needed to do that. So say OK. So we have different things in our text frame options. So right there, changing the top doesn't change the position of our text. If we do Command B, if we do center, OK. Now if we resize it, it's always going to be in the center. Obviously, if we go too small, we're going to get an error there. So our text frame just has to be bigger. So that's something else you can do. Okay, let's go ahead and hide our paragraph styles here. Let's say we wanted to increase the leading. So we could do Command A. We could increase the leading on our paragraphs. We just want to make sure we don't do too much. I went up to 20. It's a little bit overkill, but it's okay. So press W. Now if we do Command A, if we want to increase our tracking, it's going to be this one down here, the VA with the 2 arrows to the sides. And we don't want to go too much because that makes it hard to read. So we always want to be about 0 or auto. If you want to stretch it out just a little bit, you could go 10, 20 maybe. Command A, maybe the leading is a little bit too much, so I'm going to go with 18 and 20. 18 leading, which is the space between the lines, and 20 the space between the characters. And now if you notice here, we have a lot of hyphenation. So if we do Command A, and if we go to our paragraph panel, we could turn off hyphenate. So that completely restructures our text. Let me press W, we see our guides. Now it got rid of all the hyphenation. So if you don't like hyphens, if you want to get rid of it, you could do that. Or you could turn it back on so it hyphenates words. Now let's say, for example, right here in this paragraph. So if we see this last word, it's called an orphan. An orphan is basically a single word part of a sentence that just continues on to the next line. And a widow, for example, would be if we had a sentence that is the last sentence to this line and it goes into the next column. So we could easily manipulate it to go back onto this line. So one way to do that is you could highlight both these lines and decrease the tracking here. Now we might have to do it a bit too much. So it might, see, that's a little too much. So this is all at a -50. it starts looking really tight. So we don't want to do that. If we could get away with that by only clicking on it a couple times, like let's say -20, that would be okay, but it didn't work. So one thing we could do is start looking at what else we could do here. So maybe if we highlight the whole paragraph here and decrease it all to, let's say 0. See a -30 on everything. It doesn't look too bad compared to everything else. So that brought it all up. Another thing we could do is on this first line, the UT starts right here. We could force that down. So in order to force it down, let me press W. I'm going to zoom in. If I click on my cursor or my type tool, put my cursor right before the UT, press backspace, hold shift and press return. That breaks it up into where the next sentence starts here. Now I could actually probably highlight all of these and go back to 0, and it's okay. So it's not to say that everything has to be the same, so you could always fudge a little bit if you have something like this word. So go ahead and play around with things like that. That shift return is a way to basically force a sentence or a word down from where you don't want it, and it'll still be part of the same paragraph. Now let me show you what happens if I do backspace and press return. That gives me a hard return. So basically if I add any text formatting, the space after, for example, or the space before, it's treating this as its own paragraph because it was broken up by this hard return. So then that might give me a space where I don't want it. So that's why we always do a soft return, backspace, and then shift return, so that it just forces it down to the next line, but it's all still part of the same paragraph. So that's a way of formatting things. I'm trying to look for other issues here. Now, we do have an error. We'll take care of that in a bit. But I want to click away and I want to show you what else you could do with an image. So if I go to File, Place, and I place this Quell Photoshop file, say Open. And I'm just going to click and drag somewhere along the center, no set size. This places the image right above the text. Now let's say I wanted to have that text wrap around this image. Well, I could go to text wrap. If you don't have it, go to Window, Text Wrap. So the text wrap panel. And this first option wraps around the bounding box, which is the blue line, the square. So I could click on that. So now the text bounds around that. Let me resize this. I think it's a little too big. Remember, if you hold Shift and Command, it's going to resize it. But let me undo. If you hold Shift, Command, and Option, or Shift, Command, Alt, it's going to resize it towards the center. So remember, don't just click and drag the frame. Make sure you hold Command and Shift to center it. So now the text is wrapping around, but it's right at the edge. So if you want to give it some space, I could increase this space, and we see another bounding box around this image, and it forces the text away a little bit. Now let's go ahead and copy this page. So earlier I mentioned how to add pages, remove pages. We could duplicate a page by clicking on page 4, dragging it to the new page icon, and now we have the same thing. However, on this one, I gave you guys a Photoshop file. So let's go ahead and go into our links panel. If we don't have it, go to Window and Links, which I have down here. So this tells you what's linking to this document. So all the images that we're placing are being linked from the folder where we're selecting them from. So this second one, the second quell.psd, is on page 5. It tells us it's on page 5. This one is on page 4, so the one previously where we copied it from, and all the other images. So let's go ahead and open that Quell PSD file, because I did something to that Photoshop file that we're going to use in a bit. So we could right click and we could edit original, or we could simply go into our quell.psd file and open it up in Photoshop. So here's what we're going to do with this image. This is the Quell PSD. Now we're working with the Photoshop file that's linked into InDesign. We're going to open up the layers panel and turn off the BG layer or the background. And we're going to go to File, Save As. And we're going to change this from quell.psd to format. Let's change it into a PNG file. So the reason for this is we have no background, so it's going to save the PNG with no background here. If we were to save it as a JPEG, it would fill in the whites because a JPEG is not going to support transparencies, which is what this is going to be, transparency. So we want it PNG, as PNGs do support transparencies. And let's go ahead and save it in that same file and say OK. Now we could close our Photoshop file. Do not save it. And let's go to InDesign. Now this file is still linking to that Quell PSD file. Let's go ahead and click on this link icon, so relink. And let's look for our Quell PNG. So it should be in our images folder that we had from the beginning. Select Quell PNG and say open. So it's going to replace basically the image that we had with now the PNG that is transparent. Now if we have that selected, let's go into our text wrap. Now instead of wrap around bounding box, let's click on wrap around object shape. And when it does that, now we have a new wrap, but this is again wrapping around the whole shape here. But if we go to contour options, if we click on select subject, now it gives us a rough outline of our quell here. And now the text is wrapping around the quell. And again, we have the option to increase that outline. So we could increase that outline and click away, press W, and now we could see something that's looking pretty cool. Except for this word, again, you want to try to avoid these single words like this. Any widows or orphans, try to avoid them. So we could move this around and we could have it somewhere there. That looks pretty neat. And maybe do a little bit less. That looks a little bit weird. So then it just becomes a matter of finessing things. So I want to say something like that. So just some options that you could do. With that, let's say you wanted to add an image here and you wanted it to cut off for whatever reason. You could do that as well, or you could just simply even, drag a shape here. Let's say that was your shape. I created it with a pen tool, a vector shape. I'm going to give it no fill. And I could make it wrap around that shape as well. And space it out. So you could always do something like that if you wanted to put an image there or something. Okay, now, so we have two errors here. Let me just go ahead and fix them. So I'm going to make this text frame bigger. I think we have just too much text, so I'm going to delete this. I think I just created way too many paragraphs. And this is just going to be to get rid of those paragraphs. So, and then this one, the same thing as well. Highlight, delete, highlight, delete, until we get rid of that. Since this is only only for a quick project. Now, if you actually had this text and you had to create all the text or had to format all the text in a real project, then you would have to, solve that issue, whether it goes onto a new page, make the font size smaller, etc. Use our formatting skills. So good time to save. We should be saving a little bit more often than this. Okay, something else that we can do here is we could add a drop cap. So I'm going to go to the top left here. I'm going to highlight this paragraph or the L here. And if we go to our paragraph panel or our properties and go to the paragraph area, we have this drop cap number of lines. So if we increase that, so that's going to make that L take up 2 lines. We can make it take up 3 lines, etc. And we could add, if we wanted to, with this A plus here, the drop cap 1 or more characters. We could add more characters, for example, if you wanted a whole sentence, etc. This looks a little weird here, so I wouldn't do that. But if it was a little bit smaller, maybe like this, lorem ipsum, and then it continues, etc. So a few different options. Let's go ahead and leave it at 3. 3 here, and just the 1 letter. Now let's talk about kerning. So let's go back to this California love area. Go ahead and save. Let's click on our type tool. Let's say we wanted to add a little bit more space between the E and the V here. I feel like they're a little close. So if we're looking at the negative space between the L and the O, that's pretty wide. The O and the V, that's a little bit closer, and the V and the E are almost touching. So I would put the cursor between the L and the O, and then I would decrease the kerning. So the kerning is right here, or in our character panel as well. So it's at 0 right now. So everything should be set to 0. Right now it shows metrics. You could choose optical, but the kerning is the individual space between 2 letters. So I could decrease that. So that brings the O and the L closer. The O and the V, I want to say that looks okay compared to this one. And then the V and the E, you want to increase it. So let's bring that up to 10, maybe 20, maybe 30. We could do 25. And I want to say that looks pretty good. Now, if you want to do it with shortcuts, I'm going to go into California here, zoom in a little bit more. Let's say I wanted to make the N and the I a little bit closer. I put my cursor in between them. If I hold Option or Alt and I use the left or right arrow keys to make them closer. So when you kern, you always want to look at groups of 3 letters. And as well, you pretty much only kern for headlines, sub-headlines like this. You do not want to kern body copy. This would be a little too much. But for this headline, for example, the F and the O, let's say there's a lot of space there. Put your cursor between, hold Option, and use the left arrow key to tighten it up. Let go, use the right arrow key to move it to the space between the O and the R. Hold Option, close it up. And let's say that looks pretty good. So that's how you would kern, and click away. So you pretty much would want to kern any titles. This California, we're looking at the negative space, so I'm pressing W. Naturally, that F and the O are a little bit separated compared to here, so I could double click, put my cursor in between those, Option, and close it up a little. The O and the R as well. Click away, so that brings it closer, so it looks a little bit more cohesive. I wouldn't do it to the name here or the welcome to unless it was like a bigger, bolder font, especially on, well, maybe between the W and the E. We could do that. Actually, let's do that. So close that up. That looks a little nicer. But you do not want to kern script font like this, because if I put my cursor between like the M and the O and welcome, it's going to break it up like that. So you want it to look good. And let's go ahead and save that. So that's something else that we can do. And now let's go ahead and go to our spread, the 4 and the 5th page. Let's go ahead and add a last page. and do some more images there. So let's go ahead and add a 6th page. On this one, we're not really going to follow the grid, but let's go ahead and go to File, Place, and let's place some images. Let's go ahead and place this Clara Marie, Johannes, Levi, and Maurice. So these 4 images. You could hold Shift and select them all at the same time. So these 4. Say Open. Now if you click and drag from the top left margin and drag to the bottom right and go to the right edge of the margin, don't let go. If you press up, it gives you rows. So I could do 3, 4 rows. So press up or down. We have 4 images, so we're going to do 2 rows, and we could do columns. So if you press to the right on our keyboard, we could see we have the space for 4 images. You could increase it, decrease it. We only have 4 images, so I'm going to leave it there and go ahead and release. Now that drops in the 4 images as best they fit within that area. So that's just another trick we could do. You could zoom in. Now these images are not, basically what it does is it gives us a image frame, and whether the image fits in that frame or not, it determines it. You obviously cannot fit this vertical image into a horizontal frame. What we can do is select one of these images. We could right click and we could go to fitting, and we have a few different options. What we could do is we could fit the frame to the content. So if we fit the frame to the content, the frame is going to wrap around the content there. This one as well, right click, fitting, fit frame to content. So now we have it as it should be. Obviously they're not matching, but that would be, moving things around if we needed to, resizing or cropping. For example, if we undo that. Now what we could do is click on our content grabber tool and then drag the image larger, hold shift to the bottom, and we could have it fill up the whole text frame, or the whole image frame right there, and we have something like that. We could fill all of these in, in a similar style. So it's up to us how we do that. And we also have those options in our properties panel. So if I click on this image, or let's click on this Lake Tahoe one, in our properties we have the frame fitting options, and you could play around with a lot of these and see what type of things you get. But some of them are going to skew the image, so I try to keep things basic to where I'm not making things disproportionate. Okay, now if I go to my links panel, all of these images that are linked, if I click and drag to make a selection over everything, they're all on page 6. So we have these images here, they're linked. So I want to show you what happens with the errors here. So right now we have no errors. If I go to my Finder and if I basically find those images, I have 2 instances here. Basically it's Clara, Johannes, Levi, and Maurice. If we go to the Finder and we change all of these, so I'm going to change this Clara, click once and type in 1, hit return, and then click on Johannes, click on it again, wait a second, name it 2, hit return. Or you could right click on Levi Jones, say rename it to 3, hit return. And then Maurice, right click, rename it to 4, hit return. So we physically change the names outside in our folder, right? Be careful when you do this, because if these are linked to anything, which they are linked into our InDesign file, now we have 4 errors. InDesign is looking for those images because we just changed the name. So if I click in our links panel for Clara, it's looking for It's looking for this information here. So it's looking for the file Clara Marie, the old name basically. And it's looking for it in the path of, this is the path, basically the breadcrumbs that lead up to it. So the fundamentals folder, my InDesign Practice Exercise, that should match yours, the images folder, and it's looking for the file right here. So it can't find that file because it was just renamed to 1. So if I select that image, say relink, and select 1, and I'm basically going to replace it with that, say open. So it now replaced it with 1. Now I don't have an error. I have 3 errors, so it's the other ones as well. Now what happens if I relink it wrong? If I select the second one, go to my links panel, relink it. If I relink it to 1 as well, it's just going to put that image there. But since I had messed with it, let's see where it's at. It is up here. So let me undo. So it's basically putting that image since I selected 1. Let me undo. So I want to make sure that I always know what images are linking. Since I named that one to 2, just to make it easy, select it, links, relink it to 2. And this one should be relinked to 3. And this one should be relinked to 4. And there we got rid of our issues. Another thing that could be an issue is right now it's linked to those files. If I go back to that, to this folder, if I take, it's looking for the images in this images folder. If I take 1 through 4 out, it's still looking for them in here. So now it can't find them. So now here's an issue again. So one way to fix that is to relink them, but have it find the path to where those images are. So I could relink the first one the same way, relink 1, but now I'm looking for it outside of that images folder, and it will find all of them. Sometimes it finds all of them. Right now it only found the first one. Sometimes it does like the whole batch. So the other way to fix them, let's undo that, is if you go back, it's looking for them in that path. If I go back and change files 1 through 4, change them into, or put them into the images folder, drag them in there. Now InDesign detects them because that was the original path. So always good to know the location of the files you are linking to, especially once you get into your portfolios. If you're linking to the files, sometimes it's going to make copies and have a folder that is specifically linking to your images from your InDesign file. Have everything organized there. So let's go ahead and save, and I want to cover one last thing. So if we wanted to number these pages, we could create text frames at the very bottom that say page 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. But that would be individually creating the pages on each page, the page numbers on each page. So if we want to have a little bit of automation there, we could go into our master pages. Let's say we have a book that is 100 pages. That would be a lot of work to do it on a lot of pages. If we wanted to do it automated, we could go to our parent page. We could zoom in to the bottom left wherever we want our page number. I'm going to click on my type tool. I'm going to click and drag down here at the bottom left. And I'm going to right click. So I basically made a small text frame, right click. And then I'm going to insert a special character. I'm going to go to markers and current page number. So it gives me an A. I'm going to highlight it and format that. I'm going to change it to a different font. Since we're using the ATCs, I'm going to say ATC Agate Bold. Now my text frame here, it's on the left hand side. So I kind of want it to align with the just for the sake of design, I want it to align to the right. So I'm gonna right align it. Now I'm going to copy this, or actually I'm gonna make the page number bigger, 14. Now a way to copy this is I could hold Option and drag it. And I want to keep it aligned here. Now this one I want to do left aligned. And I'm going to drag this all the way to, hold Shift as I drag it, hold it all the way and drag it to the right page. So it's the same thing, except it would have been the same thing as doing right click, insert special character, markers, current page number. So now I'm doing the page numbers on both. Actually, that was the wrong place. I should have gone a little further. I'm trying to do it on the right hand side of the second page. So I'm lining it up there. Now if I go to page 1, I can't see it. Page 2, can't see it because of the image. But if I go to page 3, it gave me page 3. It gave me page 4. And it gave me page 5 and page 6. So now if I add page 7, add another page, it creates that. So it adds the pages as you go. And that was the last thing. So let's go ahead and save this. And let's go ahead and make a PDF out of this. So let's go to File, Export. And we want to do this within the same folder. So it should put it where your InDesign file's at. Go ahead and make it a format of Adobe PDF for print. Click Save. Now we have these options. Adobe PDF preset, we want to leave it to high quality print. This PDF X1A is a pretty universal one. When I was out in the field, we would be required to do this. So always make sure when you're creating a PDF what is wanted. If not, high quality is a good option. Now, do you want to export this as pages, as spreads? Typically you want the single pages, but it depends if you want this to look like a book online or anything. You could do spreads. You could do a range if you want to select certain pages. We want to do everything. Go ahead and leave all of this as is. Compression is if you want to make some images a lower quality just to reduce the file size. We're okay without it. Let's do marks and bleeds. Go ahead and select crop marks and bleed marks. And then under bleed and slug, say use document bleed settings. Go ahead and turn that on. And actually, let's go back to general and say view PDF after exporting. This will make it so that once you save the PDF, once you create it, it's going to open up. So let's go ahead and say export and give it a few seconds. Okay, so now this PDF was generated with this line here, which is going to be where it's going to be trimmed at. So it gives us the bleed. So these are the bleed lines. So the printer would know where to trim it because they're printing on big sheets, and that way we don't have an issue with the edges, and it tells us like the document size here with these outer crop marks. If you don't want crop marks, then you would want to turn those off, and we're going to do that. And then I just saw an error here, which I should have thought about. This black down here that we created does not match this black. So this black is a solid black. This is a rich black that has the one up, but with the palm trees, it has a mixture of different colors. So let's go ahead and fix that while we're at it, and we'll generate the new PDF without the bleed. So it just depends if you want crop marks or not. Always something good to pay attention to. So let me close this. So let's go back to InDesign, File, Save, File, Export again. Well, actually, before we export, let's click on this square. I'm going to zoom in. And if we double click the color, we could see it's 100% black. Okay, cancel. Now if I click on the eyedropper tool and I select to sample this image, so this part of it, if I click on that, now if I double click on the black, it gives me that it has cyan, it has magenta, yellow, black. I'm going to add this to the RGB swatch. Say OK. Now I could go to my swatches panel and it added that color. So I'm going to double click it. I'm going to turn off rename value color and I'm going to say palm tree black and say OK. And that's basically how you would add a color to the color swatches. So now that color is matching to that. So let's say you wanted to add another color while we're at it. Let me click away to deselect everything. I could add a new color, double click, and I could manually adjust colors here and add it to the swatch, or I could go to my color panel, so window, color, and go to color. I could change the options here to, let's say, RGB, and I could click anywhere here. Let's say I wanted to add this bright green to the swatches. I could click on the options again, add to swatches, and it adds a color there, and now I could use it for, like, let's say text or something like that. So first you have to add the colors onto your swatches. And then one note, when you're doing RGB or CMYK, it's always good to do RGB. Just know that the colors are going to look very bright, very vibrant. However, if it gets printed, there's certain colors like this where it's not going to be able to show like a neon bright color on printed paper. So just keep that in mind. The colors will look a little bit more dull. CMYK versus RGB. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Let's say I wanted to make California that bright green, or welcome to that bright green. I could select that. And there we go. Save it. Now let's go to File, Export again. And again, PDF or print, we're going to save over this document. So go ahead and save it. Say replace. We're replacing that PDF. This time we're going to go to marks and bleeds, and we're going to turn off crop marks and bleed marks. And let's say we don't want the bleed, so we want this if it was cropped. And let's say this was for presentations online, not for actual print use. Turn that off, say exports. Give it a second, and now it trims off at the exact page width. And there we have it. So something you can actually present. Okay, so that concludes the this portion of it. Now let me show you how you package a file like this. So what happens is if you were to turn this InDesign file into me, I would be missing everything, basically your fonts, your links. So if I open it, I'm going to have issues. I can't grade your work. If you send me the PDF, obviously I could see your PDF, right? But I want to check. I want to open up your document and see what you did. So I'm going to need all of your files. So in order to do that, we go back into InDesign, we go to File, and go to Package. And this is what you would turn into, like, let's say a client. If you're sending it to a printer, you want to make sure they have your fonts, they have your images, because if not, they're not going to be able to print. So I'm going to open a package and then say, let's run through this. Everything's okay. We don't have to mess with anything there. And say package. And we want to package it within that same file here. So it's going to name it InDesign Practice Limon folder. That's okay. We could leave it like that. You could make sure it's your name. So it's going to pick up the name of the file. And actually, let's change it from folder to package. So InDesign file, InDesign Practice, your name, and package. We want to make sure copy font is included so that the fonts are included with it. Linked graphics, so that's going to be your images. These could be off. Sometimes if you have links or layers that you turn off and you don't have anything, if you have stuff there, if you want to include that or not, we don't have anything hidden. We want to include an IDML file and include a PDF for print. So you always want to have these checked on. And go ahead and say package. And then go ahead and say OK if that shows up. So the IDML is it's like a universal InDesign file, just in case somebody has the older version of InDesign and they try to open up your newer version. If it doesn't open up, they could always do the IDML file. So now let's go to our Finder. We should have this InDesign package folder, which should include the document fonts. So any fonts that you used, the IDML file, remember that's the universal one in case the InDesign file doesn't work for somebody, the IDML does, and the PDF, as well as the links to any images that are linked onto your document. So now what you're going to do is you're going to right click on InDesign Practice Package. You're going to compress that. Let me close this. And what you are going to turn in is this InDesign Practice Package.zip, as well as that first PDF you created. So when you go to Schoology, you're going to click on InDesign Practice Exercise Project Submission, and you will submit those two files. So the PDF, and I believe I have the instructions here. So submit your PDF and package zip files. So those are the two documents you will be submitting to this project. Again, do not turn in your InDesign file. I want your zip file as well as your PDF. And that concludes this project. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me as you're working, anything with this, not the last part, creating your PDFs, creating your package. Let me know. I'm here to help, and I want to thank you for following along, and we will see you on the next tutorial.